Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. Let's just smash through another weekly update here. So, looked like Bitcoin had a pretty strong close to the week here, closing above here. We've been consolidating for, over a week here in strong territory, all closes above this support. So, the market's showing us that it's strong. And we just click to the weekly. We can see if we zoom in a little bit here, we had some selling, but buying came in and we closed strongly above these levels, which this is a major swing top here. So closes above here are good. We'd like to see several weekly closes above this level to have more confirmation that we're going to maintain this strength. We have 5 weeks to the upside here in this swing. That's getting a little, it's not completely overheated for Bitcoin, but I'm just keeping that in mind. So as even though we're sitting in strong territory now, we can absolutely just skyrocket from here into all-time highs, but also just not going to be afraid if we start to get some downside and maybe even come test these lower levels. Just something to keep in mind and maybe not get too wigged out because right now the market's showing us it's very strong. So if we go to the exchange volume, that's something we've been tracking. We broke out of this double top here, showing strength. And what I was saying is I'd really like to see some higher lows form above this like $50 billion area, which is this line here. Getting some higher lows above that will be nice. And so we just kind of have to wait for that confirmation. If we don't see those higher lows, we want to be paying attention to see if this actually drifts back down into this accumulation zone, which may mean either we're slowing down or maybe it's going to be a little bit longer before we get that breakout. But we might just be on track. We might form those higher lows and we keep going. So just trying to keep in mind the upside, the downside. Things are looking really good. Like it's not going to surprise me if we just take off from here, but you got to have a level head about these things and be like, okay, what if that doesn't happen? What am I looking for as more confirmation for myself to maybe have a little more confidence that that's what's going to be happening. The other thing that makes me feel like we're not totally overextended right now, uh, leaving more room for the upside is the funding rate heat map. And so briefly, what the funding rate is when you take leveraged positions, if the futures price is different than the spot price, the longs or the shorts will have to basically pay a fee, which basically they use funding rates to try to incentivize the price of the futures in the spot market to be the same. And so if it gets adrift one way or the other, you're going to have to pay a price in order to trade at those prices. That kind of incentivizes people to, come back to the mean essentially. So anyway, but when the funding rates get really high, it means like if we're going up and we're getting into this 56 APR, these extended levels of really high funding rates, it means the people who are going long are having to pay a lot of money to go long because it's getting overextended beyond the spot price or it's getting pushed above fair value, so to speak. And so this is a really good sign when we're overheated, when we have these really high APRs, meaning that things are just out of whack and the longs are really having to pay for it. And we're not there yet. So that was the last run up that we had in December of last year. And so if we kind of just zoom into the 30-day, we can see things are pretty calm. There's a couple other ones like, there's a lot of speculation on Fartcoin right now. So funding rates have been high there. I wouldn't touch that one. And there's a couple of them. I don't even know what ZKJ is, but either way, relatively quiet, not seeing a lot of overheated across the board. So I'm not too terribly worried about pullbacks in this part because this is the part that gets kind of vertical, and so we're used to having this. This was an 8 month drawdown, and this has been several months already. So you kind of get used to this idea that these corrections are going to last a long time. It's just a different phase of the market, and so yes, we'll probably get pullbacks. They can become more violent, but probably going to be possibly shorter lived is the way I'm viewing that. So yeah, across the board, looking good. We're getting increase in volume. We'd like to see higher lows above that. Funding rates aren't too overheated, so I think we got a long way to go. Um, yeah, and the other one too that I've been tracking here, and I've talked a lot about on the channel. Let's clean this up quick. Is the M2 global liquidity? Bitcoin uh, basically tracks this it's like 90 to 80% of the time. So it's like, sometimes it's 90% correlated, sometimes it's 80%, but it's like highly correlated and there's a lag to it. People have different theories on whether it's a 10-week or a 12-week lag, which one fits better. I'm sure there's some math behind it, but either way, 10 and 12 weeks seems to be kind of the standard here. Let me see if I can find another chart that's not so ugly. I'll just shut this off. Okay. So anyhow, anyway, so I basically set this out 10 weeks. So this is the current global liquidity, but we shifted 10 weeks because it basically takes about 10 weeks for that liquidity to find itself into Bitcoin. So if you do that shift, it pretty much lands on these peaks and troughs identically. You know, like M2 went sideways, Bitcoin went sideways, M2 went up, Bitcoin went up, M2 went down, Bitcoin went down. You can see it just tracks this thing really, really fast, like to the dot on the week many times across the board. So anyhow, global liquidity is on the rise and will be on the rise until looks like mid-July. So that's kind of why I'm expecting this particular run up to go into mid-July. I don't see why it couldn't do that. And if you get, let me see. Oh, I don't have the offset for this one, but I don't usually use the daily very much because it's a little too granular. But anyway, I did jump in there earlier, and it's like, there's kind of a we were kind of in a sideways period on that on the daily, and Bitcoin tracked that perfectly. And then anyway, we have another leg up on the daily coming up soon. So it's not going to surprise me if we blast up through here too, because I mean, essentially, I'm trying to keep a level head. Like this is really bullish. Like I mean, we definitely had the highest. Well, actually, we had the highest weekly close ever in history. That's like there's no more bullish place to be than an all-time high territory, really. So I try to have just keep my expectations managed. But this is, I mean, whether it's this week or in a couple weeks, the upside from here is going to be aggressive across the board. So, and that's kind of what we've been waiting for, biding our time, waiting for those lows, different confirmations of strength. And so this is kind of quietly happening behind the scene. Like we just printed the highest weekly close. You don't hear it in the news. Before when this was happening, inauguration day, like it was all across the news. This is all you could hear about, which marks the top, right? And so now we're at those same prices, yet there's no news. These are the kind of things that you kind of, you know, I don't know, over time you kind of see these patterns where it's like, they were super excited about it and that marks the top. Nobody cares about it. And we're at higher prices. So it's just kind of like don't pay attention to the news. That it's not really going to help you very much. But what I'm saying here, why it's not going to surprise me if we just take off from here is because, when we go long, crap, I have less crap here. Let me just clean this up here. Yeah, we can keep that. Leave that. Okay. So anyhow, when people are shorting this market, they've set their stop losses at particular places, and which means if the price reaches those, and see we have a couple levels coming up here. These would be places where people put their stop losses, and in fact, this would be another place. Here we have kind of a swing there. And so what happens as people who are shorting the market here as the downturn, as we're coming down, people are getting more speculatively short. What happens is they have like these stop loss orders right here. And if the price goes beyond that, all their sell orders turn into buy orders, which creates buying pressure. So you can see that's one of the reasons why we drove through so aggressively here, just because there was kind of some short squeezing going on, basically a lot of short orders getting turned into buy orders, creating that buying pressure, the shorts getting liquidated basically, and then we march on. And so like this kind of causes a vacuum effect of kind of a death spiral of sales. And so like this will shoot the price up, and then more and more stops get hit, which makes more and more buying pressure. So it's kind of a positive feedback loop, and it kind of just gets vacuumed up to these higher prices in these kinds of structures. So like we're very close. We're kind of in a vacuum here now in a way where, I mean, this is the last hope for the Bears basically. And then, you can see that they've been absolutely wrecked over the last 5 weeks. So this is the Bears' last chance. That's their final hope. And if it breaks here, it's like all bets are off. Everybody who was short this whole time now has to be long. Like we've breached into all-time highs. Like, so anybody who was bearish this whole time and got liquidated all the way up, I mean, they're sitting in a position where, they don't really have a choice. They have to buy into the market because we're clearly long, but they got wrecked the whole way up. So anyhow, we were on the right side of this one. and we followed the data. That's pretty much it. So we'll just see how this holds. We had the highest weekly close in history. Does that mean we need some time to cool off? Maybe. Does that mean we shoot up from here? I mean, you know, typically seven or so bars in a single swing direction kind of indicates exhaustion. You don't see that too often, and if you do, it's usually not too around the corner. You kind of have to go back each chart and back test that, but it's just something to keep in mind. There's kind of a rule or a guideline where 7 to 10 bars or so in a swing direction, be cautious. Like you don't want to get in. That's not really where you want to get in at. Even though yes, prices are going much higher from here, especially long term in the cycle. These are just not the areas typically to get in unless your your swing strategy is to go with the trend and buy on a break, which is also that is also a strategy. But anyhow, let's see. I'm just kind of doing this live. There's a few charts that I haven't taken a look at that I am interested in. Looks like ETH BTC is just taking a little pause here, possibly finding some support here. This is going to take a while. This is going to take a while for the structure to form here to give us any indication. It has a long way to go to show strength, but typically what you want to see is Ethereum performing well in the is the, kind of the next stage of the whole crypto cycle where liquidity goes from Bitcoin to Ethereum to the others. This can give us an indication on when this pure alt season will happen. Anyway, seeing strength in ETH BTC would be nice, but we've already seen our first signs of strength. Basically, this is like the first time we've actually accumulated and gone up. It's been down only for a couple years, so that's a positive sign. And then let's quickly look at Bitcoin dominance. Yep, Bitcoin dominance looks like it wants to fight this a little bit here. It was looking pretty bearish here for a while, but right now it seems like it's putting up a good fight. So we're nowhere near the um, we're nowhere near the levels of Bitcoin dominance that I would like to see to have like full confirmation of full blown alt season. That's a ways away, but either way, we're seeing a stall here, and we will see how that ends up playing out. USDT dominance again. Reason why we're kind of why I'm not going to be surprised if we don't just shoot up from here is because we are at heavy resistance at the USDT dominance, meaning, um, we're just at levels that I would, we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, basically between we have some support here and we have some major resistance up here. And so it may need to fight this a while. And this trend line is, 7 some odd years old. And so, we did break through. This is the first time in history, I believe, we broke this downtrend, and you can even see how much it fought it then. It didn't clearly break all the way through. So we're just at levels that I'm kind of expecting some grinding. So if, we don't see immediate upside, I think that's actually a good thing because it means people kind of lose interest and they leave the markets, and it just is a quiet place to accumulate while other people are kind of losing interest. So that's also a possibility here. We might just chop around for a while in these zones before we break through. So, or we could just break through tomorrow. It's like we just the real answer is that nobody knows. Not gonna bother with this one. This is others dominance. This is a super messy chart, but basically what I would like to see is a break up to the upside, meaning that all of the dominance of all of the other cryptos goes up. Like that's what this period of time is here, and that would just be like anytime that this chart goes up aggressively is basically alt season. Like we've had a couple mini ones this cycle, but nothing crazy, nothing like like that. That's a pretty big bull market for the altcoins. And so, but we are just kind of sitting down here, consolidating kind of tightly. Like this could just be nice little accumulation before we drive higher. That would be my speculation into this time zone here, which kind of puts us into like Q1 of 2026. I could see this ending just based on some previous time analysis. Other than that, I think otherwise, I think I'm kind of just talking your ear off here. I think these are the things that I'm tracking. Things are looking really good. Hands off the wheel, basically. The time to get into the market was a little while ago, a few weeks ago, clearly. And that's basically what we did about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We opened some positions, and those are doing really well. And now it's just kind of like you just wait it out. I mean, we captured this structural low, I believe, and so it would just be like catching this. Like, what do you do? Just hands off the wheel. You get in the market. We came in on support. and waited to go more aggressively until we had more confirmation. But I mean, nobody's listening, nobody's paying attention to this right now. So, um, I that makes me feel more confident. Like if everybody was super excited about it and there was a lot of greed and there was a lot of chatter about this, then those are kind of sketchy signs. But other than that, looking good. I think the next few months I'm kind of expecting a more of a cool off during the summer, but I think according to that M2 that we've been tracking so closely too, it looks like we don't really have a major correction in that until July. So I think that the rest of this month, June into July, probably going to be pretty interesting, pretty good, and we'll just have to see how it goes. We'll keep tracking. Thanks, guys.